Stan, she said to me, I want it to be said of me, she's here, she's there, she's everywhere. Your job as my coach is to make that a reality. Well, that wise and wonderful woman is Deb Newman, and she's going to be our guest and tell her story today on The Marketing Life. Welcome back. I'm Stan Hustad, and this is The Marketing Life. It's an internet TV show beamed literally around the World Wide Web. And we're here to help you. That's right, we're here to help you, first of all, live well, and to market you so you can build a business, be successful, make more money, and have more fun. Now, one of the fun persons in my life, not only is she a client, she's a colleague, she's become, as they all should be, dear friend, Deb Newman. Deb, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Stan. I'm excited to be here.
Well, Deb, do you remember when you told me that? We had just met.
You're right, Stan. It is a little hard to remember back 20 years, but I do remember that. And part of the reason was that one of my very good friends had told me, he says, Deb, if you're going to be an expert in long-term care, you need to be known throughout the state as the expert in long-term care.
And you had made a decision, and you were thought crazy over 20 years ago when nobody else was talking about this. You had made a decision that you were going to specialize in long-term care insurance.
Right, and you're right, Stan. Everybody did think I was crazy. I have a lot of friends and colleagues now coming back and saying, Deb, I thought you were crazy 20 years ago.
And so you did that, and then this one believer in you gave that incredible advice. Now let's repeat that advice. That was interesting.
Well, what he told me was, he says, Deb, if you're going to do that, you need to be known as the expert.
The best.
That's right, in the
Extra
whole
value.
state.
And in the whole state of Minnesota.
And I can remember at the time thinking, how do you do that?
Right.
And so that was the challenge.
That's right. You wanted people to say, she's here, she's there, she's everywhere. Now, as I remember those days, in the cold winters of Minnesota, you got in your car and you had your briefcase and you tried to be here, there, and everywhere. Tell a little bit of that story.
With the overhead projectors.
That's right.
Yes, I mean, every church group, every Rotary, every Kiwanis, every insurance group, everywhere anyone was having a gathering of people.
You were ready to go.
I was ready to go and was doing it. And I can remember back that my husband, I'd leave at 6 o'clock at night to go do something at 7 o'clock at night, and I'd be back at 10. He'd say, are you getting paid to do this?
That's right.
And I'd be like, well, no, but I'm sure that it'll pay off in the end. And indeed it has.
That's right.
Yeah, it really has.
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do here is exactly what Deb and I continue to do, and that is to figure out how can we be successful. And so we've decided, we've kind of worked on this, that when it comes to business success, there's kind of a trinity. There's nothing holy about it, but it is a business trinity. The first thing is you have to have something of an incredible, exceptional value.
Right.
Insurance is a commodity. Most things are a commodity. Tacos, trucks, termite control. You can buy it from anybody or nobody. How can you have unique value and wisdom? By being an expert. Secondly, how do you distribute that knowledge? How do you get people to know about you? You can be the brightest person in the world, but if nobody knows about you or your product...
And that's a challenge.
It is.
Yeah.
And we're still working on that again today.
Right.
Well, the third challenge is after you do that, can you make any money doing that?
Right.
And that's what your husband was asking. He was asking question number 3.
Right, yes, as I spent so many, even Sunday mornings,
That's right,
doing the education hour at churches.
That's right.
Yeah.
Are we making any money on this?
Yeah, exactly. I could trust you on those. I did not.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, that really is the key to it. And the distribution thing is to figure out how to attract business. And Stan, that's something you taught me years ago. You actually used those words to me. You said, Deb, you need to attract business. Rather than, going after it, you need to attract the business. And that was really done by being this expert, so that people turned to, when they had a need or a discussion came up about long-term care, they say, oh, I know who we should talk to. We should talk to Deb.
Because she's here.
Yeah.
They've seen you. She's
Right.
here, she's there, she's everywhere.
In fact, one of my favorite lines was the state of Minnesota. I've spoken at a lot of hearings. I've spoken at educational things, county by county, for extension offices. And I remember somebody telling me at the state that they said, we want that long-term care lady. Find that long-term care lady. And that long-term care lady was me. And so fortunately, somebody knew who that long-term care lady was. And connected that back to me. So that really was key to our success.
And I have discovered, again, one of the great things we talked a few weeks ago about mentoring and the great vitality that goes into mentoring is not just that literally, if I'm a coach and I'm mentoring Deb and hopefully she learns from me, but what really happens is I learn from you. And when you're mentoring and coaching another person, I even prefer the term now, it's a partnership, because you'll learn oftentimes as much from the person you're working with
Right.
as you will learn from the person who, quote, supposedly is doing the teaching. And so hopefully I've taught Deb a few things, but you know what? That great line, I still remember that today, where she said, she's here, she's there, she's everywhere. I want that to be said of me. Now, it wasn't because you printed a bunch of brochures and sent them out, was it?
No, in fact, the one thing that we've learned over the years is that I'm also not very good at writing.
Right.
Or if I do writing, somebody else has to kind of get me started, and then I can take it from there. And that, Stan, was one of the values that you added, because I think in what you're talking about, this commodity business, is that you have to be different. You have to
Right.
differentiate yourself, because if everybody's selling the same commodity, how can you be different? And one of the things that you did for me early on, and this was early on when you hear about it in a minute, because we used cassette tapes. But
You know what those are?
yeah, what we did was an audio newsletter. Because what Stan knew about me is that if he asked me a question, I would be able to answer it.
With personality and energy and force?
Right, and that passion. And so what we did is every quarter, we did an audio newsletter about what was going on with long-term care insurance, what the products were up to. And this was for financial professionals and agents to learn about how to help their customers. But we did that audio newsletter and sent it out, and then people would even tell me that they were driving along, and that's when they would play their cassette.
We were doing social media before there was such a thing.
Right, yes. And of course now you can't even buy a car with a cassette player.
That's right, you can't.
But that was kind of some of the
Right.
cutting edge things that you did for me. And the other thing I have to tell you, and I've told you this many times, was that through your art of listening and then playing back to me what you heard me say, I would often come up with the solutions myself as to how to direct our business. But I needed you to listen to me so that I could get those ideas out of my head and then understand what direction to go. And at the end of a meeting, I would say, oh, that was simple.
And she had figured it out herself. And one of the things we've oftentimes said, that what you want to do is you want people to discover the truth for themselves.
Right.
And if you can create that, so Deb is not going to ram long-term care down somebody and then having all kinds of, oh, should we have done that?
Oh, remorse and all that,
We
yeah.
want them to figure it out for themselves.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And we did that through another discovery that we made together, which was really the art of storytelling.
Right. And one of the things that you and I are going to talk about a lot more, in fact, as the Marketing Life Coach becomes a whole series of coaches, just remember this, as we've mentioned before, and Sam, when he talked about social media, the best have a coach, but the truly great ones have many coaches. And Deb doesn't know it fully yet, but she's perhaps going to join us as a little bit of an associate coach, because there's a couple of things she knows about too. First of all, one of Deb's symbols, at least the one I've given her, is breaking glass. Because Deb, like you said, not only were they thought you were crazy 20 years ago, but you were also a woman.
Right, yes. I think I remember one of the agents that we know well, saying, well, little Debbie.
little Debbie Newman.
Yeah, is over there doing long-term care insurance.
And so figuring out not only how to be a specialist in long-term care insurance and making that happen, but kind of breaking that glass of, my goodness, a woman in leadership, a woman starting her own company. That was all very new stuff.
Right, and one of the things I'm most proud of, Stan, which is not so much what we're doing here today, but in terms of industry leadership, has been the ability to carry those stories on further. And one of my favorite organizations in the entire insurance business is the Life Foundation. And the Life Foundation is the awareness campaign, if you will, for the insurance industry. And we're the got milk.
That's right.
For the insurance industry. It's called the Life Foundation.
She's here, she's there, she's everywhere.
Well,
our stories are everywhere. It's our goal.
Well, and as the Life Foundation does to educate the public. Right. And so I'm going to be the chairperson of the Life Foundation in 2012, and I'm really excited about that as well, because that's one of the best, most positive messaging organizations I've ever seen in the insurance business.
And in fact, we met when you trusted me enough as the program chairman for Minneapolis NAFA to give this guy you didn't know a chance to speak
about goal setting.
About setting goals, and that led to a number of things. And so, again, even in terms of industry and community service, Deb has followed the motto, which is, she's here, she's there, she's everywhere.
Well, and then also give first.
That's right.
That is also one of the mottos that I think has served you well and has served me well, is that give first, because those are the things that come back to you. And serving your industry, in my viewpoint, is probably one of the most important things that we can do.
One of the things that we oftentimes say on the Marketing Life is this: hey, you know what? Let's understand that perhaps some of the things we've learned about sales and marketing could be wrong. Remember this old motto, sell them, serve them, and then get them to give you names. That's the old symbol. Sell them, find them.
Right.
Not attract them, find them, then sell them, then serve them, and get them to give you names. Deb discovered something new, which all successful people have discovered. You serve them first. You serve in order to sell. And
I think that's how we attracted business.
That's how you attracted business.
Right, because we really genuinely wanted people to understand what it was, and so did that by doing all of those talks all over the place. And then those people came forward and said, you know what, I want to solve this.
That's right, because you served them first.
Right.
And sold them. Yes, and one of the things Deb is going to help us with is this incredible power of storytelling. The power of telling stories. Now, we discovered this a few years ago because, like everybody in this business, they get objections.
Right, yes. And how do you overcome
objections?
The objections? And there was a lot of training over the years.
Feel, felt, found.
Right, yeah. And how to manipulate the conversation to...
And we said, you know what? That's wrong. In fact, I just got
something... Well, and I don't know that it's wrong. I mean,
you're right.
It does work for some people. But
it's not our style.
Right. I think that the storytelling became a more natural way for me to communicate, because I could never get those formulas down comfortably.
That's right. And what we've discovered is that when you overcome an objection, not deal with it or help the person discover that for themselves, is in effect you're saying to a person, you're wrong.
Right. I mean, somebody's got to win.
That's right.
You know, when you're overcoming objection, it becomes kind of a battle. And are you going to convince them that you're right? And you know,
and no one likes to lose. We lose enough in life without. Well, I lost that one to the insurance agent, and by golly, I bought it.
Right.
You know, and
yeah.
I even had one person who was an assistant one time who told me that she gets calls sometimes where it says, "I just bought this. Do I really need this?"
Yeah. Well, probably they did.
Probably they did.
Right.
But they were wondering, you know,
Right.
because they felt that they had been kind of overcome a bit.
Right.
Well, one of the things we did is we went through a whole series. And this is a great exercise. Remember what we did? We got, well, we all can do this, all of the different objections we usually hear.
Right, or the excuses.
The
what
excuses,
if people tell you
when they don't buy?
When they don't buy.
And we came up, I think, with the 9 big objections.
Mm-hmm. At least for long-term care.
At least for long-term care, and you can do this. So what we would like to do in the last few minutes of our program here together is we're going to do a little role playing, okay?
Okay. Uh-oh.
And I'm going to do an objection.
Okay.
Remember, like we did? Okay, I'm going to do an objection, and you're going to demonstrate to these people that you're not going to overcome it, right? Are you? You're not going to beat me down. You're not going to make me feel foolish. You're just going to tell some stories to help me deal with the objection.
All right.
So,
Let's see how we do.
Let's see how we do. There's 9 of them. Well, let's start with the one we used that you actually heard the other day.
Yeah,
you mentioned this to me.
Yeah.
You were speaking to a group here in Arizona, and someone gave you the... Okay, here we go. We're going to call this the Dr. Kevorkian objection.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, which is pretty common.
Pretty common.
Yeah.
Well, Deb, this is you know, you're obviously a very smart woman. I'm impressed. But you know, when it comes to this long-term care insurance, by the way, it is kind of expensive, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Can be.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm just going to call Dr. Kevorkian. I'm going to take care of it. I'm not going to be a burden to my family. I'm going to find a way out.
You know what, Stan? I greatly understand that. I mean, I hear that a lot, and I understand that probably seems to be the easiest way to do it, you know. So, yeah. I mean, so one thing might be, you know, tell me what your plan is. But, you know, that's hard for any of us to do. But you know what? It reminds me of a story that was told to me by a good friend up in Duluth, Minnesota. And he, a little Italian father who had significant heart problems. Mm-hmm. And he would tell his son, Pat, he said, "Now, Pat, if I ever get bad, just shoot me. And that was his plan. So, you know, Pat knew that was the plan. Okay, Dad, I'll shoot you. And so his dad ended up with congestive heart failure, and he'd be out in the driveway with his walker, and he'd be saying goodbye to Pat. And he said, "Now remember, Pat, if I really get bad, just shoot me. Okay, Dad. Well, then pretty soon he had to have a nurse in the house 3 or 4 days a week helping him with different things. And then he would be saying goodbye to Pat again with his walker. And he would say, "Now remember, Pat, if I get bad, just shoot me. Okay, Dad." Well, then he ended up in the nursing home, and Pat would come to visit him, and he'd say, "Now remember, Pat, if I ever get bad, just shoot me. And the point of it is, when is it that it's bad enough? And that's what happens to us. We realize too late that we want to preserve life, and that plan isn't really the plan that we want to use. So I know that it makes sense to say that, because we all feel that way. But it may not be the best solution, Stan.
Now, you see what she did? She didn't make fun of me. She
Right.
didn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to understand how you feel.
She affirmed me. She didn't overcome my objection. She simply told me a story in which I say, yeah, and would I ever shoot myself? Could I really do that?
Right, or certainly not expect somebody else to
do it.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
And so I said, well, you're right. And now I reached that conclusion. It wasn't because this smart, tough saleswoman
Right. Argued with
me about it. She affirmed me.
Yeah.
By simply, and that's a true story.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, it's a little humorous now. I mean, it was a true story.
Okay, you get the idea? Now we're going to try that this time. Okay. You hear this one a lot, I know. Deb, you know, this is right. And again, this is not inexpensive stuff. But you know, I'm very fortunate. I think, you know, my kids have promised that they're going to take care of me. My kids have promised they're going to take care of me.
Wow. You know what, Stan? We don't really hear that a lot because most families now aren't in a position to take care of their loved ones. So if your family has told you that they'll do that, wow, what a fabulous family and what an honor for them to do that for you. But you know, one thing would be, wouldn't it be a wonderful gift if you were able to, at that time, to tell them, I am so grateful for you kids for helping me, and indeed I am. So what I did is I put a plan together which would allow you to hire somebody to help you. What a wonderful gift that would be for you to help them as they're doing that caregiving. Because you know what, Stan? You've got a pretty profound family if they're willing to do that for you. So this is a way that you could honor them by helping them at that time.
And you see, I didn't put down. In fact, I was honored. And you just simply tell a story about how something could be done a little differently.
Right. And there are stories. I mean, I could tell stories about if that didn't work, then I would go on and tell another story, you know, about this family that moved up to the same community my parents did. And I've got story after story after story. And one of the reasons that you get so many stories is that you listen to people that tell you the stories. Mm-hmm. And then you realize how those stories could help others make the decision. And so you gather the stories. And the one thing I'd love to tell you, Stan, is that these are not my stories. All these things didn't happen to me. They're other people's stories, and you can retell them. That's okay to retell somebody else's story.
It's fine. It's a
because
story.
It reminds me of a story, and let me share the story with you. Mm-hmm. And then it allows the client to discover
for themselves,
if you will, the fallacy of the excuse that they gave you.
For themselves.
Yeah, for themselves.
Now, this is one of my favorite, because you always say, I've got plenty of money, Deb. I'm going to self-insure.
Right.
You got a story for that?
Right, and I'll see how quickly I can tell. This is actually one of my favorite stories, and it's a wonderful agent that told me this story, who's a commercial property casualty agent that also did financial planning. And he had a client who was one of the wealthiest individuals in our entire state, and assets over $30 million. And this gentleman was having lunch with Dave, and he said, hey, Dave, I've got to tell you that for the last 38 years, I got my house appraised, so I knew how much my house was worth. And then every year I would call a different P&C agent to find out how much homeowners insurance would cost. And so I found out how much homeowners insurance would cost. But I didn't buy the homeowners. I put the premium in an account. And he says, it's 38 years later. And he says, my house is worth $750,000, and I have over $1 million in my little account. So he says, I won. I didn't need the insurance. And Dave's like, okay, so congratulations. He says, oh, by the way, I want to buy long-term care insurance. And so Dave's like, okay, am I the fourth person you've asked about this? How far along are we on this? And he says, no, I want to buy long-term care insurance. And Dave says, why would you buy long-term care insurance when you've got plenty of money? He says, look, the reason that I didn't buy homeowners insurance is that I knew what the financial risk was because I knew how much my house was worth. I knew what the statistical risk was.
Right, that's underwriting.
Which was only like 2%. Mm-hmm. So I was willing to take that risk. He said, but with long-term care planning, he said, I know there's a greater than 50% chance I'm going to need it, and I have no idea how much it's going to cost. That's the very kind of risk you transfer to an insurance company. And then you just leave that out there, and the client is thinking, I don't have $30 million, and somebody with $30 million bought the insurance, so maybe I should really reconsider this. And so again, they're listening to the story and they're discovering it for themselves. I didn't object. I agreed. I said, boy, that's probably a good plan. You got plenty of money, but let me tell you a story about somebody else.
There you go. Oftentimes, Deb and I have discovered that if you really want to affect people's behavior, not just educate them, but to affect their behavior, what you do is you go back to that long-term secret that wisdom is best communicated in the art of telling stories. Well, now you have heard Deb Newman's story, and I hope that you will get in touch with her. Debbie, if they'd like to know a little bit more about that little how to overcome and deal with, not overcome, deal with, how could they reach you?
Yeah, because we actually have a DVD of
That's right.
Or not a DVD, a CD of all
not
of those
cassette
stories.
anymore.
Right.
You can play this in the car.
Right. And they could just simply go to our website at www.newmanltc.com.
Say it again.
newmanltc.com.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your time, your energy. I hope that you will live well. I hope you'll be able to continue to market yourself and build and grow a business. Thank you, Deb. Now we know some marketing secrets that will help us build that business and make a difference in the lives of others. I'm Stan Hustad, along with my good friend,
Deb Newman.
wishing you all the best and blessings. And until next time, bye for now.